second too.
No problem.
We haven't done it in a while, so I have to put it in. What's tomorrow, the first day?
For later today.
One of our bus drivers, John Forrest's daughter is
Yeah, good too.
farm caught a fire, so how they crammed it.
Call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I would like to bring regrets on behalf of Councillor Deal. She is assisting with the fire up in the north end of the municipality tonight, so that's why she's unable to make it. Unfortunately, and other than that, summer's here, temperature is anyway, so I don't have much else, and hope everything went good for everybody over the last few weeks. I'm sure the deputy mayor did a great job of handling everything. We did. For land acknowledgement, we would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is their traditional territory for the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the neutral peoples. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of the agenda? Councillor Wilby, Councillor Chartrand, that the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated June 20th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? And motion carries. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from any member of council this evening? Okay, seeing none. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Deputy Mayor, that the council of the municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as circulated, and that's the regular meeting of June 6th and the Committee of Adjustment public hearing on June 6th. Any comments or questions on those minutes? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And our consent agenda. Are there any requests to remove any items from the consent agenda at this time? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull 6.3, the right to repair. I'd like to pull that and support that. I think it's important for our agriculture community.
Okay. How do we do that as a separate motion?
That, we can approve the consent agenda for items 6.1 and 6.2, and then we'll just go back and have a separate motion for the item that was pulled.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda then, please? Councillor Wilby and Councillor Fisher, or sorry, Councillor Dalton and Councillor Fisher. I was looking on this side of the room and I said it. All those in favor? And motion carries. And your motion is just to support that document?
That is correct.
Do I have a seconder for that?
Second that.
Moved by Councillor Dalton. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Motion carries. So we are down to public meetings, hearings, and delegations, and 7.1 is Bob Costello, Park Administrator for the Seaforth and District Optimist Club, read the request for funds for roof replacement and playground equipment. Bob, welcome.
Say hello to everybody and thank you very much. So Brian Berry and I, president of the club, we went to a trust meeting and approached them about funding for some stuff at the park, which they gave us funding for an AED for the hall. So we've got that coming. But then we found out from 3 members that there was a $10,000 allotment for Parks and Recreation for the different parks. But I've been talking to Brad McRoberts since then, and we've had a conversation on the phone. But the stuff that we've done down at the park so far is we put the sidewalk in, we replaced the swings, had to put a new slide on. We're waiting now 8 to 10 weeks for a new tunnel to come between the 2 platforms because it's starting to wear out and we don't want any kids getting hurt down there. And then the roof, oh, it's kind of weird. On the east side, it needs a roof. Everything else is good. But we were talking with Brad about that too, and we're gonna see if it's gonna be good enough to last for the winter, and we'll look at it again next year. And then we had some tree trimming done down there. And I'm looking for somebody to come in and replace 2 light bulbs on a couple of the poles because Huron East truck doesn't go high enough. And Alex's truck doesn't go high enough. I wrote an email to the fire chief to see if it'd be possible to get the fire truck over there with a bucket on it and then do that. Might be liabilities against doing stuff like that. But we need 2 light bulbs replaced down there too, and I was gonna get Alexa to do that. But we were here to see about funding, like I said, for the $10,000. Like I said, Brad and I have already been in conversation about all that, so we're just letting you know what we've done down there and where we're at, so.
No, I do appreciate that, and actually Brad and I have talked about it in the last day or so, a couple times now, and really do appreciate that anytime you guys have a project underway, if you contact the staff, because even if the municipality is not involved in it, we may have ways to save you some funding.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that he's probably already
Yeah,
shared with
we
you,
talked about that.
and something that I want to share with council later on this evening. So it's always good if the municipality is aware of the projects that you're doing. And yeah, just
So,
keep the staff
forward-
informed and work with.
Okay, yep, so moving forward from here then, like we had to get trees trimmed too over the ball diamond because there was a lot of mowing and growing going on with obstructions, and so we'll just approach Huron East then and see if the public guys will go down there with and trim the trees for us, is that right?
You can make whatever requests you want. So the bottom line is, if it's something that they feel they can handle it internally with the staff, then they certainly have the authority to do that.
Okay,
If it's something that they think is a little bigger and that council should be involved with,
okay,
then they would bring a plan back to council to have a discussion.
all right. That's basically all we've got, right? That's basically it, so where we're at, and where we're going, and I've actually been talking to Mrs. Cronin, I think it is, about funding for the hall too, for 2025, so we can make it accessible for wheelchairs and stuff. So her and I are gonna have more conversations about that too.
Councilor Sharkey.
Yeah, I was, as well as fellow trust members, were taken back a little bit when they came and asked for money for the playground. Because in our 2023 budget, there was an audit done of the playground equipment, and we put $10,000 towards the Optimus Park playground equipment. What struck me was when the group came, we asked them, did anybody from the municipality tell you or let you know that there was $10,000 there? Because they went out and spent $10,000 on their first structure of the slide on their own, when they could have used their fundraising money for some other things. Nobody at the municipality approached the group to say, we have got $10,000 in the budget for the Optimus Park. They didn't know that.
We knew nothing of it. Nothing.
So, you know, going forward, if we're gonna be budgeting stuff in our parks, we should be letting the organization know what's happening, because they came and asked for $10,000 for that. They came to ask for $3,000 for a defibrillator, which we gave them for that. And that's why we instructed them to come to council, because we own that park. No different than when there was a motion passed a while ago to pay for the roof at the lawn bowling club, because we own the lawn bowling club. It's our capital. So in this particular case, the $10,000 that we already assigned in the budget for the Optimus Park, I feel should be going to them to offset their expenses that they've got coming forward.
Okay, and I appreciate the comment, and having good communication both ways is beneficial. This is an exceptional year as far as when the budget got passed though, which was only what, 5 weeks ago, something like that. So we were really late into the season,
So much.
like long past when you would probably even get on the bandwagon to start getting this equipment ordered, everything else. Councilor Steffer?
Yeah, just, kind of reiteration, nothing, it was in our capital budget, correct? Yes, so we have decided, did we, and this is for CAO, Brad, when we did the equipment audit, what was the $10,000? What did the audit show that we were spending that $10,000 probably on?
It was for the slide. Yeah, we weren't aware of any of the other parts being deficient.
When did we do the audit?
It would have been last year.
When did the, oh, sorry,
Hey, Bob.
when did we do the slide as the Optimus? When did you pay for it, or when?
Find it here. Slide?
It was in the springtime.
Yeah, it was in the spring.
So we overlap timing of when Dave recognized, or something, was it Dave? So when we did our audit and then it actually was replaced. And how much was the slide, Bob?
I don't have that bill with me.
I understand the point you're making, Councillor Stepler, but although we recognize that we wanted to put money towards it, they had the job done before we didn't pass the budget.
Yeah.
So then we shouldn't have passed the budget because the work was already done.
We recognized there was money to put towards it. We didn't know they had already done it either. There was no communication either way.
We assumed,
They didn't share with us, we didn't share with them.
We did
assumed
the audit last year.
A year ago.
So did anybody not talk to the optimist to say, hey, we're doing an audit on your stuff at that time?
we knew nothing
Possibly,
about it.
but
And I don't know, I'm just asking.
I was of the understanding that there had been communications about it being done, but I can't verify that.
We knew
And the good
nothing.
news is we just appointed a new person this week to look over all of it. So that's a good news thing. So
We knew
let's just
nothing-
revisit it.
We knew nothing of any of that. We just assumed that us being the optimists and not being our part, we just look after it. We didn't know we communicate with anybody. So
And I still reiterate the fact that this was such an exceptional year because normally we would not be anywhere near this far into the year before a budget gets passed. And it wouldn't make any sense for us to go to the optimists and say, hey, we've got 10,000 in our budget for this when we hadn't even passed the budget.
Oh.
We had to wait till the budget was passed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Fair. You know, we'll just communicate.
I just want to follow comment. I mean, it sounds like potentially maybe being critical of staff. We got to recognize we're going through that restructuring process. We have a new organizational framework, how this is going to be done. And quite frankly, this is the first time we've ever really broached into dealing or even putting dollars towards capital projects for parks that were being managed by some of our service clubs. It is a first stop. We'll get a group to, it'll be good.
Any other comments at this time? Okay, so Bob, thank you very much for bringing the report. I do appreciate that. We will certainly try and communicate better with you guys, but as I said, if there's anything that your group would like to even start working on, and the more notice we have, like a year in advance is even better. Even if we're not involved in the financial end of it, doesn't mean there aren't going to be opportunities for us to help save you money.
Well, I was in contact with Bayfield and Sawville because that's a floodplain down there, and they told me basically that if we remove that building, we may not be able to put another one up in that spot. So we're just gonna leave well enough alone, and we'll just see about adding on to it. On the south side, we were thinking about putting an elevator in, so make it accessible to the upstairs, get rid of the fire escape and go there. But we're trying to make it a single floor dwelling, but then we gotta change the structure, and then Bayfield Sawville gets involved and blah, 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 it's just. You guys know.
All right, any other questions for Bob? Seeing none, thank you very much for your.
Thank you. So moving forward, then I'll just be in contact, we will be in contact with Brad then.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay. I am down to municipal drains petition for drainage works.
This was just a, excuse me, petition that came through as part of a improvement that is already underway in Morris Turnberry with Headway Engineering. So this is just bringing the drain work past the border into Huron East up to the property line. So it's going to be forwarded back to Morris Turnberry for the administration side. They just need council support that they can move that branch up to the property line there in Huron East.
Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Move by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Wilby. That the council of the municipality of Huron East accept the petition from Elizabeth Carter, concession 6, lot 3, Grayfield, for an extension of the Grant Municipal Drain. And that the petition be forwarded to the municipality of Morris Turnberry as part of the Grant Municipal Drain project already underway. All those in favor? Carries. Reports and recommendations of municipal officers.
This is just a information report as an update to the Geyser Municipal Drain. So this is going back a few years. It went through an appeal stage, which finally came forward with a decision in February. As part of that, the engineer was to reassess the property as per the order, which I laid out in the report. They provided those assessments and those have gone out to the property owners. I just wanted to make sure council was aware of the progress and the status of it as part of the awareness piece from it.
And the next one, pay equity review.
So, part of our budget, we did include some scope of work to do a pay equity review. I did send out the RFP. Yeah, we put the RFP out in June, or due for June 6th, was sent out May 6th. We did get a good response back on. We did get 6 submissions. Part of the evaluation process was the requirement to make sure that any proponent met the technical score. One proponent did not, so they were removed from the evaluation. The remaining 5 were reviewed and scored by myself and our executive assistant, HR/payroll. And so based upon that review, we are recommending that this service be awarded to Gallagher Benefit Services for a fee of $21,500, which ended up being the lowest fee of the proponents' submissions anyway, so. But yeah, Ms. Mazinski is actually, I know her and she's done quite a bit of work. She does have 30 years of experience. She does provide HR support for this type of service to, I believe it's North Huron. And she's done a lot of municipal service for municipal pay equity reviews. So I'm confident that she'll be able to complete the project. Any questions for council? I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Councilor McGrath.
I'll be speaking again for this. We seem to spend a lot of money on experts and professionals and reports. Have we got a complaint that our employees are being underpaid, undervalued?
I'm not sure that we have a complaint. I think we do endeavor very hard to keep our staff happy. My concern would be is that when you've gone between 5 and 10 years since you've done a review, the chances are categories or the groups are getting out of whack. It's not necessarily just the amount that we're paying, it's to make sure that everybody is technically falling properly in pay equity so that they're being compared properly to the rest of the workforce. That's the legal requirement that we have. It's not just to match a paycheck. It's to make sure that they're paid properly compared to their comparators.
I just have a problem with it. We can't find money for other things. We can find money for a piece of paper and a positive report to lay on the shelf somewhere that says you should do this, they should have that. It's if we had a legitimate complaint, I'm being underpaid or I'm doing more than I being paid for or whatever, it's my concern, but yeah, I don't want to build a library of professional reports on the shelf, but I know where you're coming from. However, to me, it's a total waste of money. When we hire somebody, for the most part, I believe there's a little research done where they go around whatever the position is, if it's a rated operator or a recreation director or a stale treasurer, whatever. I mean, I'm sure we do some checking to see if we're right in the ballpark with that system. So I just think it's $25,000 sit on the shelf and do nothing, but that's my opinion, and that's why I will not be voting in favor of it.
Okay, and I can appreciate the fact that filling out or paying that kind of money when we don't think there's an issue. Problem is, we're not gonna know if we have an issue until we get a report back on it. I was happy with the selection because I can say that I think we paid these monies before, and I saw a name in the listing that I wasn't happy with the work that we had in the past, but I think it's been at least a decade since we've had this type of work done. So the fact that, yes, even $2,500 seems like a lot of money, but if it was $2,500 every year to know that we're treating all of our employees fair compared to each other, I think that's an easy step in stone. So, Councillor Stempler?
Yeah, I have a couple comments too on that. When Brad or CEO Brad started, when was our last pay equity review at Huron East?
I'm not even sure we had a formal pay equity review, but the last documentation is 2005.
So 18 years. The other two comments I have is by using the same consultant that we know that has it, is pretty easy, 22,000, because they're gonna compare the work they've already done. So, you know, you're gonna say, how much is our comparable people around in the same areas? Would it be better to look at somebody that doesn't have that knowledge upfront with an opinion? And then lastly, go back to a little bit, we're already looking into 4-day work weeks, different packages of employee retention and management of the positions. Isn't that a whole package as opposed to just straight pay? It's a work environment we're trying to have. Go ahead, Brad.
So in the first question, in terms, I want to make sure everybody understands that the process, they may have done the same process before, but they still have to go through the same process. So, and it's not, I think we're getting mixed up. We're calling, this is a pay equity review, not a market check. Okay, so they're not just going out and finding what everybody else is getting paid and seeing whether we're in the right level. It's about making sure, because we've made a lot of changes internally in terms of positions and who's where. So we got to make sure that everybody's being paid appropriately from a pay equity standpoint and from a statutory requirement, because we made those changes. Okay. So that person has to review all those job descriptions that are now new and created. And there's a lot of job descriptions, folks. You have a lot of different types of positions in this organization. So they have to review them. They have to evaluate, score them. That's step one. Okay. Then they have to look at our pay grid and determine whether our pay grid is appropriate for what it is, whether we should consolidate bands, expand bands, whatever their recommendation might be. So that's kind of the internal and statutory equity. Then they go out and basically based upon that, go out and look and say, okay, what's the market like out there? And where do you sit with this new proposed pay grid on that comparison? So, you know, you might think it's a lot of dollars, but it's, you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort on behalf of an individual or a company to go through that process. I found the price quite reasonable, honestly. Some of them are getting close to up to $50,000, 21's pretty good price. And so I can't remember the second part of your question.
Well, just the, you know, so we're trying to create a more favorable work environment around that. Isn't that all of the same process? Would we be better to hold off until we're ready to perform that whole function? I'm just thinking that if there already are employee standards, and then there are wage gaps for X, Y, and Z. We've already got that. That's law for the most part around municipal politics.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking if we're gonna do a whole package, would be more beneficial than stuff coming up and trying to recreate a change work environment for $25,000 to the next consultant.
I don't think we'll go, I think what we'll be doing, it'll all be kind of happening concurrently. So in fact, actually, I believe next week it is, the 26th, is that next week? Yeah. Staff are actually, the department heads are getting together to look at strategies for a workforce plan. So we're doing that ourselves, right? And so I think that those strategies plus the whole compensation piece all come together, right? And then ultimately get presented to you guys as a council to support, decide what you want to do. So it's not being done piecemeal, it will be done as a collective whole, but no one in-house has the expertise to do a pay equity review.
And I've sat through at least 2 of them, and I agree with that 100%, because they, from our perspective as members of council, we're not qualified to do it. Like, we had to review the job descriptions and everything else and trying to do the whole point thing, and it's not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm gonna say there's probably people that deal with that stuff day in and day out that are a lot better at handling it. I do have a question though. I've been involved in a number of them, not only with Huron East, but with other organizations. And it seems that whenever you got a small group of bands, they always want to expand it. Whenever you got a big group of bands, they always want to shrink it down. To me, it always came across almost as a justification for doing the job. My comment is this, is that the expanding of the bands, I see some merit to it. It's a little more complicated on a day-to-day basis, but I see some financial merits to it. Where when you squash the bands down, you are forced sometimes to pay people technically higher than you would if you had more multiples of bands in there. Has there been any discussion about what it is they're gonna work towards? Like whether it's gonna be more or less, anything like that?
No, I think it'll depend upon what they're gonna review it, that's their obligation, and then they'll make recommendations to us.
Okay,
Doesn't mean it's absolutely gonna happen, and it may not, it may stay the same, it might be somewhat consolidated, I don't know. That's fine.
Councillor Sharp.
Good question.
Yeah, it may not have been since 2005 since they did a pay equity review. I've been here 9 years now, and I know that we looked 2 or 3 times at all the different grids, what you were talking about. And we also, when we hired people to try to retain people, we actually had created more new grids to try to move that person up a little bit, to give them a little bit more money. So I don't know where we're at in the amount of grids, but we have looked at this in detail over the last 7 or 8 years. I don't know if that equates to pay equity. Then again, on the other note, we've done very well. We are employees over the last 2 years as far as pay raises. We gave them all a 6-point-something pay raise this year and 4-point-something last year, which equated to over a 10% pay raise. So I don't know that it's about the dollar, but are they being paid equally for what they're doing?
Right.
Is the question.
That's right. That's the legal question.
Yeah, so I get why you want to do that for that point, but I don't think, to Larry's point, that anyone's actually complaining that they're not making enough money at this point in time, because we have been, even though we didn't have to match the CPX or whatever that's called, or it was up to the council's discretion, how much of, even though they said 6.5, we could have said 2. Well, we didn't, because we want to keep our employees caught up with the rate of inflation. So I think we're doing a good job that way for our employees.
Did I get a mover and a seconder? Okay, mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Newell, second by Councillor Morrison, that the council of the municipality of Huron East award the pay equity review to Gallagher Benefit Services Canada Group Inc. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna be number 6 because I know it's something we have to do. Motion carries. Russell Berry Wing mural.
Carolyn's here.
Oh, sorry.
Second. Yeah, so the Economic Development Committee met last week. And I guess this idea of Fairy Wings mural has come up over the years. But there hasn't been a community organization step forward to actually do it and pay for it. So we had a discussion at the Economic Development Committee, and that's something that they supported. It wasn't budgeted for that project. So as far as where it would come out of, it would have to come out of our reserves, which we had allotted for the Brussels streetlight decorations. So I believe there was $30,000 that was to go towards that project. And we purchased them, and that project came in just over 21,000. So the Economic Development Committee was recommending that we allot some leftover funds from that project to the mural project.
Okay, I'm gonna get a mover and a seconder, and I'll read the motion. Do I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Stepler moves it. Is there a second? Councillor McGrath seconds it. That the council of the municipality of Huron East support the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee to hire a local artist to paint a mural in downtown Brussels, promote the Ferry Door Trail, and attract visitors to Brussels. And that the project be funded through the remaining reserves allocated to the Brussels streetlight decorations. Okay, comments and questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You to Chairlyn. Chairlyn, you said you bought the Christmas decorations already, right? Do you anticipate any more expense coming from that, i.e. like methods to hold them up, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so that cost included the brackets,
Okay.
as well as the decorations. So as far as the installation, that's all that's required. There was a clause at the bottom, that said that the shipping rate might be a bit higher, but shipping is included in that price, so it might increase a little bit. And then our public works staff does have to install them.
So just for clarification, Brad, this money was already in the budget that was approved?
Well, it was in the budget, so we had 30,000. Again, it's kind of reserves, and I guess. I mean, I think this is a great project. Don't get me wrong, I just struggle at a standpoint that we're kind of already deviating off of our budget and we're bringing things in that we're gonna, anytime we have extra money, where someone wants to try and spend it. And I guess I'm just concerned that council will be conscious of the fact that if you take money that's being used for reserves and you spend it, that means you're gonna need that more money next year when you try to fund your other project. Just be conscious of that. So if you don't spend it this year, you might be able to put less into the reserve because you'll have that little bit of balance there. So that's one piece. I struggle a little bit from a standpoint of projects. We just approved the budget and all of a sudden now we're getting people coming to us with all these projects. And I'd like to be able to say, could this not wait until next year? That's kind of that would be my preference. But it's absolutely council's decision and I absolutely think this is a great initiative. Don't get me wrong, it would be ideal if we could wait till next year and do it next year.
Carolyn, if I can ask, is there any opportunity to get any funding anyplace else without the county paying 100% of it or the municipality paying 100%?
Yeah, so I mean, the options are that they could go to the community groups, the service clubs and see if they would support it, the Brussels Trust as well. And then if it could wait till next year, there is opportunity to apply for grant funding. So I know that the Rural Economic Development Fund, they do fund murals, as well as the SLED project through Huron County. I know that just some community members feel like they were kind of left out of the county mural project that was just done. So that's kind of where this stemmed from, is that they had this mural idea and they didn't get the county support. Whereas Seaforth did. So it just becomes that, that community got this and we didn't. So yeah, there are other options, but again, we wouldn't have those options for this year. Like if they wanted it done this year, they would have to ask community organizations, I guess, to support it.
Okay, and I asked the question because it was pretty obvious. I didn't have hands flying up all over when I asked for a mover and a seconder, and I think the CAO is absolutely correct. It wasn't part of the budget that was already approved by the council for this year. But quite often when there's a partnership and we're not being asked to pay the whole bill on something, it goes a lot farther as far as acceptance by the council. Is there an opportunity to even come back in a short period of time after asking some of the community groups or the trust if they're willing to even pay half the bill?
Yeah, we can definitely go that route and see if they would fund half of it.
Councilor Steffer?
Yeah, it's, I guess what CEO Brad says, you have a bit extra money here, you take it from here, you're still whole type of deal, but that really isn't the thing. The question goes, if you have an economic development committee, they make a recommendation for this. We've already discussed at the committee level about different grants, Carolyn brought that up. We can't, $4,000, we're still under budget to put a mural up. Seaforth has 5 murals. The county didn't. I have a hard time going back to a group and saying, raise half, we'll do it, or wait till next year, because next year really never comes. That money in that reserve goes, because our way our budgeting goes to different areas next year. If Brussels doesn't use that this year, then that money goes to Vanessa or Seaforth. But that's where our budget is for capital. Like the street lights this year and then all that next year. So honestly, I think, as long as Carolyn's comfortable that it stays under budget, that money was allocated within our budget. Didn't specifically say street lights. I didn't know streetlights till after the budget was approved. This was for Brussels. So that's why at the Economic Development Committee, we said, okay, if there's money there, it's for Brussels, it's going to be strictly used for Brussels. That's great. Next year, that money, that same boat moves to different areas, is our understanding.
I just have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
The other challenge, I think, too with this project is it's not really a capital item because it's not an asset. It's not something, it's not even on our building. So it creates sort of a challenge that we've got reserve funds for capital works. Now, I'm a little less strict, I guess, with economic development because we also do have what I call more of a reserve for program costs, which will be the grant program, which we're hoping to bring out next year. The council supports that budget. But this was strictly a capital kind of an allotment that we said. So that's maybe a nuance. Again, I'm not trying to, if council wants to support this, we can. It's just, that's a nuance. It's not really, it's not a capital project, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Heading a long way around it.
We only have two budgets, so we have operating and capital, so it doesn't definitely fall under operating.
Yeah.
So we never budget for it.
It'd be part of it would be an operating budget, it would just be something you put in basically being an initiative. And if you'd known about it at budget time, we certainly could have incorporated it and council could have considered it as part of the budget.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. And I guess that's the way I see something like this here too, like, our budget is kind of decided. But when a project like this comes along, and it is a good project, I just think maybe what we should be doing is maybe getting them to either reapply, put towards next year's budget. I don't agree totally, John, or Councillor Stepper, with the money just being, this year just for Brussels alone. So I don't, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong too. Like if this request come in next year, I would fully support it, even though the majority of the money might be going to Vanastra or wherever. But it's certainly need for, Brussels, and then I would support it then. Just have a little problem supporting it this year, that's all. Without either a partnership or something like that.
Any other comments, council? Okay, I do have a motion that's duly moved and seconded, and that is to fund the full $4,500, I believe the request was for. That's correct?
Correct.
All those in favor of the motion as it was read? I have 3 in favor and opposed. And motion fails. I have absolutely no problem, Carolyn, if you want to see if any of the community want to see about partnering and still doing it this year. I suspect that will be considered very favorable. If not, I certainly have no problem with it being part of the budget request for next year. Right? Thank you. I have nothing under correspondence or unfinished business, and the council reports. Deputy Mayor.
A couple of things from Huron County Council. The golf course housing project, the official plan amendment got approved. There was also an improvement for official plan amendment for the town of Exeter or in town South Huron for 160 bed long-term care building. I wondered if that had any effect of what we've been dealing with lately.
The CAO and myself were well aware of that through both the owner of the facility and through Lisa prior to it becoming public knowledge. But we've been involved or aware of that.
Thank you. Town of Goderich, they just went through a 5-year review of their official plan amendment. Derry Wallace from our climate change initiative, along with Dave Pullen, our pre-forest inspector manager, are launching a new program called Enriching the Rural Roadside by cutting invasive species like buckthorn and phragmites. And then they're going to introduce some pollinators along the side of the road and wildflowers, etc. Because the county has over 800 kilometers of roadside to cut. They'd like to see if they can start managing some of that and see if this project would work. They're going to start it with 2 tracks to begin with to see how it works. One is the Stevenson track just west of Brussels, and the other one is the Adams track over on Gory Line. Under the Heritage Fund applications, there was 2 businesses or organizations from Huron East that applied for and received some money. One was the Advanced Block Corporation, and that is actually for the Vanastra Lido. This is a building company that had applied for some money. They had asked for $20,000 to address some of the damaged walls, peeling paint, burst water pipes, etc. They were approved by $1,000. Then Eggman House, they had applied for $4,500 to address some issues, for making a healthy and safe environment for visiting public, and they were approved for $4,500, so. That's everything that I had.
Thank you. Question.
Yes, go ahead.
Question to Deputy Mayor and to maybe you. So C4 long-term care. We brought this up a number of times, concerns are we're gonna lose ours. There was a meeting between yourself, Lisa Thompson, the owner. Your report back to us was, we can't talk about it. It was a good meeting. Well, we can't talk about it. So now we're getting a brand new facility in Goderich, brand new facility in Exeter. What's happening with ours in Seaport?
Again, I can't share a lot of what has happened, but we've had a meeting with landowners since in this area that could, if in fact there was an opportunity to get one here, be willing to supply land for it, or at least we could possibly have a location. We are going to have a discussion, I believe, a week from today, with Southbridge to see if we, if in fact there is any interest in doing something since the last meeting that we had with them. So it's not dead in the water, but we have been asked to keep most of our information close to the chest.
What upsets me is that the provincial government ran on a platform, just before did, that they were going to increase in Ontario 30,000 beds. Okay. We want that. We want to keep our nursing home in Seaport. We've been saying that from day one. 2025 will be here before you know it. And the meetings will all be done and the hush hush meetings will be all done and will be a for sale sign on the building.
And I don't dispute your fact about the Ford government saying they were going to do it, although in a number of conversations, it's been pointed out that this area by the Ford government is considered over-serviced for seniors' homes.
But the building brand new ones with more beds.
And I can't tell you what prompted those deals to be put through. Whether there were some financial incentives, so that the future owner of the home was going to get some benefits and that helped push them into the area. I can't say for sure whether that's the case or not. Yeah, I can't share anymore. Like, I even know of some of the things that went on in some of the locations in Huron County were even a surprise to the municipalities themselves.
Well, I do know from past counselors that were on here and on the hospital board, when you talk about incentives, like to bring business to your area, there was talk about donating land out by the hospital. If that's not an incentive that we're going to give you the land, I don't know what you would call it.
Although I was there for those talks, I know Councillor Fisher was there for the talks also. Although that statement was made about donating the land, after Southbridge left the meeting, there was a little confusion about what donating the land meant. Because at the time, the people that owned the land thought it was great, we were gonna donate it, but they weren't donating. Yeah, Councillor Stefan.
Okay, so Southbridge is the current owners of the manor,
That's
the current owners of the new Goderich proposal. That's right. Public don't know about Exeter.
Yes,
Is it
they
Exeter
are.
as well.
Yeah.
There are other long-term care providers outside of Southbridge.
Yeah.
They've been approved. They're there. If we keep waiting to talk to other, we need to get out there. Carolyn, because she's gone. But if we lose 370 beds total between Goderich and Exeter, we lose economic development. We need to go out and talk to Southbridge, but we don't need to stop talking just to Southbridge. We need to go to the hospital foundation to find out what that means by having our land donated. We need to know what we are offering. We can't wait to, when you can tell us, and I do truly respect confidentiality and all that, thank you. But that means nothing to us if we sit and wait to get all that. We have to be proactive, find out what land's available, offer it to Northbridge, whoever the other people are, Touchmark, Bridge Home Care. and get that out there to say, we do have land available for long-term care. Southbridge obviously has our primary provider. What can we do? We just can't wait till everybody else around us strikes deals. And then the confidentiality becomes public knowledge and we lose out on our home care.
All right. I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Well, I want to make sure that you understand that I don't think anybody's sitting around. So I've been very active trying to make connections with different groups. We've had conversations with the hospital trust. We've had conversations with Southbridge. We're in that process of trying to get sort of, like you say, all the information you're suggesting we should have kind of queued up and lined up. So it's in the work. So we're doing what you're thinking we should be doing. We are doing it. Right?
Must be a long process.
It's
not an
an
easy process.
extremely long process, and part of the problem is, even if we're happy with the deal and Southbridge is happy with the deal, if the province isn't happy with the deal, it doesn't matter.
We're not presenting anything to the province to like or not.
But the province has to put their stamp on it, or it wouldn't matter if we were gonna pay them 100% of the cost. It doesn't happen.
I agree.
So we need to keep everybody involved and up to speed on what's going on, and we push hard, but step gingerly to make sure that we can keep things moving forward is what it really comes down to. And I'm gonna dispute the fact that our best possible chance is Southbridge, because it's almost the same as our water and sewer group, is the fact that because they service a couple other people in the area, there's an opportunity to move employees from one to the other when there are shortfalls or hiccups. And that is also an advantage for Southbridge to have a conglomerate in a smaller area to be able to do that with their staffing members. And they have done it in the past. So if you were to bring in someone that had nobody else in the area, it would be a lot harder to be able to convince them that, you know, that's as good a deal.
Totally agree, but just at the same time, we can't, and Brad, you can acknowledge it, we can't wait around, we gotta, I don't think anybody here, you know, we just heard tonight, what some people thought free land was, but it wasn't. Well, maybe we need to have the hospital foundation in here to say, is it or isn't it?
Believe me, we're sitting down and we're meeting with everybody that would have their fingers in this. Yeah,
I just don't want to come at the end where we don't have anybody coming to us,
yeah.
because we, you know,
We're
we're
not
not make a phone call. We
We're
can't
not
wait
waiting
for
for
them
people to come to us, we're going to them.
That's
That's
not
what we've been
exactly
doing.
needs to happen. We need to go to them. We can't wait for them to call us.
Just that there really isn't much information to share with council this time in terms of that process. It's a progress in the works, I guess is best I can help with.
Okay, other boards, committees, meetings, or seminars that anybody wants to share? Councilor Wilby.
I had I'm not sure if this is the right place on the agenda, but I had the honor of bringing greetings from Huron East 2 Saturdays ago to the first Godridge Huron County Pride Festival. And it was led by our warden Gwen McNeil, did a speech, and we were all asked to do a speech, even though they said not. Everyone was prepared but me, and I spoke from my heart, so I thought that was all right. And everybody's speech is listed but mine, so. But I did want council to know that I represented us, and it was very well done. I thought it was really good, and so that's my report on that.
Well, thank you. If you had actually had one written out because you knew about it ahead of time, they would just ask for a copy of it. That's why it gets listed. Are there, Deputy Mayor?
Just real quick on it, yeah, I don't know whether it fits in here or not either, but I had the pleasure of bringing greetings from Huron East to the Optimus 50th anniversary they held last June 15th as well. So.
Are there any requests by members at this time? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. McRoberts, please, next council meeting, could we have a report on the Brussels Arena, please, and the Brussels subdivision development, please, and usage of the charging station, please? And are we on as part of that, are we on the charging station app that people tell me is available for everyone with an EV?
So
Who's broke?
So, yeah,
Charging
so
stations broke. ripped off the wall, slammed in the basket.
So I certainly report on that then, too, please.
It was vandalism and they're already looking into it, Bob. It happened a couple weeks ago. Go ahead. Or Brad.
So, yeah, so I don't have an issue in terms of the Morris Cray Community Center, bringing an update at the next meeting. I'll maybe suggest the Brussels subdivision. I'd like to kind of maybe wait till, maybe the August meeting, just to get some information and work. I know Barry's just getting back from vacation, so no need his support there. The charging stations, again, I'd probably like to defer that one, as council has mentioned, they were vandalized. We're working with, can't remember, the charge
Charger
crew to get the spare parts brought in and get it repaired, and it's the mounting brackets that were broken off. The unit itself is fine, it's just the brackets that we're just trying to get replacement brackets. So that's been in the queue. I've been working on that since pretty much the day it was found vandalized. It has been reported to the police in terms of the vandalism that occurred, that I believe it was that weekend. Not just the vandalism here, but other vandalism throughout the area on that weekend. I've not heard back from the OPP in terms of their investigation, whether there was any, other than the fact they couldn't find any camera evidence to indicate who had done it. That's probably the best update I can provide, Councillor Fisher, and I guess the fact that it hasn't operated probably in about 4 weeks isn't going to give you a very good report in terms of its usage. That's the challenge.
Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
Yes, I'm sure this is request by member or notice of motion, but I've been doing a lot of thinking since we went through that ordeal of our budget process and how we are changing the process now of our budget, where we are gonna put in reserves annually in every account. What my request is, our request is to have every department head track their plus and minuses to their budget. Do that for 2 reasons. One, I know myself and Councillor Fisher have been asking, how do we end up for 2022? We still don't know. If each department head, they have no problem coming to the podium and asking us for money for different accounts. I would like to see them come back to us and say, this is how I made my budget or not. For an example, I'm not picking on Barry because he's here, but okay, we budgeted this much money for a road pavement. We came in $280,000 under budget. The reason why I want to know before the 2024 budget starts of how much money we actually saved, if we did, is because now we can utilize that money towards the reserves that we've already committed to put it in, thus would help the tax levy. I think sometimes we get lost in the year's end, not knowing just how well did we do or how poor did we do. I think everyone around this table wants to know how much money did we actually save, if we did any, so that it just doesn't get the common language is, oh, it'll just go in reserves. It'll just go in reserves. It'll hold every department head manager responsible to stay close to their budget and come back to us and report how they did, so that we know when we start our 2024 budget, where we actually stand with any money that we may have saved from the previous year. That's my request.
Okay, I want to throw a little bit of a question into that. Stacy, we do technically on a month-to-month kind of do a running total of where one is with their budget anyways, right? There's an accrued and actual.
We looked at it internally, yeah. And
Okay.
I'm working on like some 2023 stuff internally right now to let department heads know where they are about midway through the year.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't want to be so onerous on staff right now that we have to do it every month, but certainly quarterly.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a bad thing just to have a running total of where we are with the departments, and probably a lot easier to manage, something like that.
Quarterly would work. That's how we used to do it in my profession.
Okay.
However, if I'm Barry and I have my budget here, and as my truck got paid for, this got paid for, that got paid for, why put all the onus on Stacy when each manager should be responsible for the budget they asked for? They can each track how they did.
I can't respond to that because I don't know if Barry enters his own accounting or if the department does it, so.
So I don't have any issue with Councilor Chartrand's request, and it's certainly something that we would be doing anyway. The reality is that we typically would do a quarterly variance report is what it's called. It's called a variance report, so it just tracks where we are. Because the budget was so late, we're a little bit behind, but Stacy's right now working on preparing what I would call the second quarter variance report or your 6-month variance report. And so we probably expect that sometime August or September, thereabouts. And of course, because we're so late and we've had some challenges trying to get some reconciliation on various accounts and corrections on accounts, Stacy's working on trying to get last year's year end kind of correctly adjusted and working with the auditors. So certainly you will see what's at the end of the year, where we stood, whether we're in a deficit or a surplus situation. And absolutely, you know, we'll be coming back when we've talked about this. Stacy and I will be coming back with a report about a surplus deficit policy. We've kind of talked a little bit about it in the financial strategy. But we obviously need to bring a policy back for council, and general gist is that if you have a surplus, that money gets reallocated out to reserves or to fund certain things. That's kind of what's coming up. So I think everything you've asked for, I think we're in the process of working upon. It's just going to take a little bit more time. That's all.
One of the things I found when we did it quarterly and we made our managers the ones who asked for the money in the first place. When we made our managers come up quarterly to give a report, it really made us all more accountable, not just while the budget's passed and I'll worry about it at the end of the year. That's one of the things that we talked about when recreation was always way over budget. One of the questions around this table was, how do we hold them accountable? We keep on putting their deficit, cover their deficit every year, but how do we hold them accountable? Well, this is a way of holding people accountable, is make them accountable to track their success or not. That's just my own opinion. I appreciate the fact that we'll get quarterly updates. I just don't want to be able to start the 2024 budget off like we started the 2023, and I realized it was a whole different process and a good one. How we're planning it. I want to know how we ended up 2023 before we bless the 2024 budget.
Well, I'm not sure you're gonna know where you are for 2023 for the 24 budget, because you're gonna start 24 deliberations in September, October, probably October.
Right, you'll know how many months you've already spent.
Yeah, we'll prorate it. You'll kind of know where you're tracking based upon
Exactly.
your third quarter variance report, probably. So you'll know kind of where you are. You just won't know what the final number is gonna be. That's all.
Thank you.
That's typical.
One thing that'll be a big difference between what you had at work rate and what you'll see in the municipal sector is you should have had pretty consistent numbers throughout the course of a 12-month period. It's a manufacturing process. You're doing the same stuff in and out. It doesn't happen that way in municipality. We have different costs that skyrocket during the summer, different costs that skyrocket during the fall. So those numbers don't equate to 12 slices.
I get that, but there are a number of things when you get quotes for roads or quotes for trucks or quotes for new IT equipment. I get that there is seasonal cost. I get that. There's a lot of fixed costs that they ask for specific dollars that they've got quotes for. This truck will cost 42,000. This grader will cost 350,000. Those aren't going to change unless they come in lower or higher.
No, I'm just saying that if,
You're talking operating costs.
no, the operating costs are the ones that, is gravel operating or is it capital?
Theoretically,
Yeah, so, but I'm thinking if Barry goes and let's say he had to buy 2 graders in the spring, well, heck, his first report's gonna look like he's way over budget or will be way over budget at the end of the year because we paid, $1.2 million for the 2 graders right up front.
But again, he goes out and tenders those graders. We know what it is.
Yeah.
He goes out and he gets a price on gravel. We knew what the price of gravel was gonna be for 2023. And we took that money because it was tendered. And that's what we put in the budget. So it's a fixed cost. It's not a variable cost. We got prices on all those things.
Go ahead, Bert.
Thanks, and I shouldn't really comment on this, but I'll just give you a little insight on how I kind of manage our internal budget. There are those fixed costs, which are the capital costs, which are budgeted at the beginning of the year. And I can't guarantee that number mid-year, simply because the market changes in equipment, for instance. I'm gonna be a little disappointed when I get the tenders in next week, I'm sure of it. I hope I bring good news, but I'm sure I'm not going to, but then that's going to be that story and where you mark your budget. Every time I bring a report back to council, that kind of gives you a bit of an indicator where we fell on that tender, for instance, the gravel tender. So I can monitor that gravel tender because that's a base quantity that I can watch go out the door and down the road. So I want to make sure I hit my mark when on the operating side of that one, same with calcium. There's going to be little tweaks here and there on that type of sides. On the operating side, again, you may fall under categories of supplies where the invoices come through and I monitor what they're buying. I can't monitor the supply until I get the monthly report on where we're at on that. But as far as your capital side of things, purchasing a grader, I budgeted at the beginning of the year, say 500,000. I don't get the tender out until 3/4 of the year. I could have missed maybe 3% on that grader. 3% on 500,000 puts me over by 15 or $115,000. Right. Easily, so
That's all right. You'll know that though.
but that's the report I'll bring to you when I'm over and under, and then we have to decide how we're to compensate for the overages on those fixed capital.
I'll be happy with a quarterly report and then our plan going forward as to how will we use that money that we may save.
Okay, I have no problem. I think it, as council's got more information, it's beneficial, absolutely. I do have one request, for a clarification. How detailed are you looking for this one to be? Are you looking for the 30 pages that we do when we do the budget? Or are you looking for almost like just a 1-page synopsis?
This can just be a 1 page, how you doing by each group?
Stacy, did you have a comment earlier?
No, it's fine. I just, we're going through a lot of changes in growing pains, so it's, there's a lot of reclassifications and adjustments to the way we're presenting statements now too. It's gonna take some time before we work through these
When
processes.
we had our recreation meetings way back when. So I was the chair of the National Rec Center. When we had our monthly meeting, Paula gave us all of our budget information in a package, and we reviewed that line item by line item. Here's where we are at this point in time. It was as of this date. We knew what we spent, where we made our savings. Each group had that package. And we used to go over it in detail. And it was always in our package when we had our meetings. Paula gave us where we were at to our budget.
Okay, well, in fairness, we will shoot for the September meeting to have the second quarter done, which may sound wrong, but it's not, because the bottom line is,
Yeah, we started late.
well, no, that's not the reason. The bottom line is that you don't even have all your invoices in for June until late July. By the time you get them paid for, in August, it's pretty tough to do the report before
Let's see how
September.
the first report goes that they bring, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
You guys have had variance reports. We did variance reports last year, so you had, I think, 2 or 3 different variance reports that were submitted. Certainly, I think before Stacy came on board, I did the second quarter variance report. So it's very similar, and it's just basically a summary saying where we're tracking and collectively as a treasurer or as a CEO, we'll identify where you're having issues, where the problems might be. I don't know whether it's going to be by department head, but certainly we can have department heads speak to any of their challenges, I suppose. We can do that. But so what I'm trying to get at is we do variance reports, so it's not a new thing. You do get the actuals to the date when we start budget process. And certainly staff will be determining based upon where we're tracking, where dollars will be, and for all intents and purposes, we'll be giving you projections on what we need for reserve contributions based upon whatever dollars Barry spent on whatever equipment or whatever recreation spent on whatever equipment based upon what the budget was for 2023. And if there were savings, you guys are going to know it because you're going to see the reports. But if there was a savings, then we'll be making recommendations about those reserves go to. So I think everything Councillor Chartrand's asking for certainly is something that's already in the works and already being done.
Councillor Stecker. Oh, sorry, Stacy, did you have one more?
Well, I was just thinking if people want to request reports for committees, there's certainly no reason why I can't produce one, but I just didn't know.
When I speak to that, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the whole point. The committees now aren't what I would call management committees, so it's the department head's responsibility to maintain the budget and report back to council as a whole. The economic development and the recreation advisory committee are advisory committees, not a management committee anymore. So they're to help staff determine what the priorities should be for going forward in terms of what actions they want to undertake.
So raise requests from department head was correct.
They used to happen that way, but that's not how we are forward.
The department heads?
Providing the sort of accounting summary to the committees, that won't necessarily happen going forward. It'll be to council on a quarterly variance report.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of department heads speaking and presenting information, it's all happening. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Councillor Stecker?
Yeah, I just want to confirm that, you know, there's a bit of stress and anxiety there, Stacy, I can see. So wouldn't it be better if CAO and Stacy came together and just agreed to what she can technically provide for that time, as opposed to
I
just
assure,
saying, yeah, we'll do it. for
I assure
September.
you, they are gonna have the discussion.
But yes, I wouldn't want to commit saying, we'll do it in September, if Stacy's going, hell, I do it, right? I just don't want something promised that's really gonna put Stacy in her time, but we do need that information if we're gonna make educated decisions for budget next year and before the budget.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, you guys had that information when you did the budget this time, but all those budget sheets had the actuals for 2022 as best we could project to the end of 2022. And you had those numbers. Sure, we were still pulling invoices in at the time and, you know, doing some, you know, what I forget what Stacy calls them, I think, transactional kind of corrections. But all that was there. So you had that information, and that's what staff used. Quite honestly, that's what staff use to determine what they project their next budget's gonna be, right? So when Barry looks at how his money went for 2022, if he's a little high in one operating expense, he's probably gonna recommend that we go to a little bit higher cost. That's our budgeting process, right? Based on where we end up being. So you've seen all that information. There's nothing, it's all there. You had it all. And we will continue to give it to you, absolutely. It's part of that decision-making process. You need to know that information. I, as a CAO, need to see that information, so I know the budget we're bringing forward is the appropriate budget. If Barry comes to me and says, oh, I only need $25,000 for 2024, and I'm looking at his 2023, and he spent 50, I'm gonna start asking him a question, right? How are you gonna pull that off, right? Not that Barry does that, but that's the process you go through, right?
Just to close it out, like. I understand what you're saying, but we did do a radical change in our 2023 budget compared to how we used to do it before. And now we have made commitments to certain accounts to put reserves in. So I just want to make sure that if we are in a situation where we actually saved money, that saved money goes towards those reserves that we made the commitments at. Because for, you know, potential tax reduction, because I know you want to balance out each year. I get that. I just don't want the term, it's all going to reserves. All going to reserves, whatever we make extra.
Are there any other members with reports for boards, committees, meetings, seminars, anything like that? Okay, Councillor Chartrand, thank you very much. Perfect segue. I wanted to discuss, I have it written down as two things. And been given about 3 different segues tonight in how I could get hold of this. But so right off the bat, as Brad said, there's probably absolutely nothing wrong with Tara Lynn's suggestion of the mural. But I do remember, I stated it a number of times when we were going through the budget process, is that Brad gave us the first time that we even saw a long-term forecast for both capital and operations of where we could be. And hopefully, because I certainly understood it this way, that this was probably worst case scenario, with the assumption that those would be the numbers if in fact we weren't getting specific grants that we don't know about even yet because they pop up and we deal with them. And when we get other funding that comes in, we can knock those numbers back so that we're not having to raise those amounts year after year. Because I don't think anybody in this room wants to see that we're going to be at 8 or 9% every year for the next 5 years. It just wouldn't be acceptable. But we had to show what worst case scenario was because we changed the entire operation. But having said that, the best thing that we can do for the ratepayers at this point is that at any time during the year that we do find a savings in any program, don't squander it. Save the money, just as you were saying, Councillor Chartrand, that, you know what, if we were gonna have to borrow money to do this or that, or we were gonna have to be putting money in the reserves next year, well, next year we can knock down what we're asking from the taxpayer to get us to that same point. And we want to be able to do that year after year. So believe me, I agree with what your sentiment is. You're right on. That's the way I think we should be addressing it. If council disagrees with me, that's fine. Please speak up, because let's have the discussion now so staff knows where we stand before they start doing budget again in 3 months. But when you're also out talking to members of the community, such as the optimists, you know what? Yes, we were going to start to help. That's maybe not something they've been used to in the past. Maybe there was a lack of communication. I'm not gonna dwell on that at all, because we're doing something different than we've ever done in the past. But if we don't have to put the money towards it and they've already taken care of it, that's great. Let's just reduce the cost of the taxpayer, or at least have it in those reserves that we know can go to other community projects. But don't be keen to spend it on day one. That's the thing that I'm trying to push for. I think another key point is, and I think it was brought up to me earlier, that the optimists also just added another piece of equipment. It cost them $3,000. But if they'd made the municipality aware of it, we could have saved them $390 on that piece, just because we get the HST back. So if they had said, we're ready to do all of this, instead of them paying $3,000 plus $390 on top, we could have saved them the $390, had the invoice come to us. We'd have paid the bill, they would have paid us. It would have saved them $390. There's an optimist group that's saving some money. We need cooperation between these groups. And so I think it would be beneficial if all of the groups across Huron East understood that we'd like to help them out, even if it's not financially from our pocket. There may be financial opportunities for them to make us aware of things that they would like to do. And if there's ever an opportunity, then they can give us a year's notice, so that it's something that if we need to, we could put it in the budget, so that we're not doing this stuff after the fact when we've already approved the budget. Like, I'm sorry, staff put more work into the budget this year than I've ever seen in the last decade. I hate to go back to them after the fact and say, you know what, your numbers were wrong, because you hadn't guessed well enough on all the things that we were gonna make up after the fact. Like, once we pass the budget, let's please try and stick to it. I realize emergencies happen, things come up, and you don't want to miss opportunities. But I do want to keep those things to a minimum if we can, because I don't want to next year and next year and next year be saying we're at 8, 9, and 10% or whatever. I want to start whittling those numbers down to them reasonable again. I think there's going to be enough tax pressures in other areas that we can't control. So let's try and control our own. I don't know if there's any feedback from council on this one. Councilor McGrath.
Well, it's simple when you come to your, and business people do it, when you come to your grants. You have a written request, you come in, first come, first serve. I know we have the year in and year out, every year we have the same people coming. But when you hit that magic number of $20,000, we're done. If you didn't get your letter in time, sorry for your luck, but I bet you next year you put your letter in January 1. So that's one area to stick to your budget, because we always vary on that one way or the other. And if these people, like, I mean, now the audience has gone away and you know, they're more aware of what you can do for them. But I think until tonight's meeting, they never had a clue what you could do for them or what you were willing to do for them. Because they manage that park from day one, even though it is our park.
Well, I'm gonna say that they, at least earlier this week or last week, learned a little bit more about what we could do, because they'd already talked to Brad. And Brad had already indicated to them that, hey, if you guys are spending the money, we can save you the tax. If you work with us, we'll help you. So, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think, going forward, it's a great opportunity for us with, the new manager, Parks Recreation, and then that they do hit the service club because parks fall within. Communication obviously is a changing guard. That's where this one was flawed. Doesn't matter, who cares, but you gotta be careful. If we're gonna go cut trees at the Optimus Park, there's a hell of a lot of trees out at the Lions Park that might all of a sudden need trimmed too. So, like Larry says, work with the clubs, but maybe it's a good time for us to do a review of the Walton Park, the Ethel Park, the Cranberry Park, all of that. And just because it was done that way for the last 80 years, doesn't mean that's the way it is go forward. And that's not the service club's fault. That's now our responsibility, not fault of Dave, Merriam, the new monitor, to go out and communicate that, hey, we can save you the tax. We can help you, but you've got to come to us a year in advance. So that starts now. He was just hired. And that's not just wait and see, because he's out there with his certificates and stuff doing reviews on parks that fall under our insurance. So it's a two-way thing, that when you go see the Walton Park, you talk to whoever's in touch and the counselors to make that communication gap close. But, the Optimists have already went out and spent that money. We budgeted that money. That's in a conversation for a different day, but that's where we're at right now with that. We own the building that they want a roof on. We already have precedent set on the other, but there's just lots to be done in the Parks and Rec side of things with service clubs, because we're not running everything the same way. We're running different in each area.
And I'm certainly hoping that because of the new structure of the municipality, that there'll be a lot better communication and cooperation between those service groups and us. Because I think everybody here recognizes the fact that without them, we wouldn't be the municipality we are. There's just no two ways about it.
Right.
You bring up a good point, and we've had this conversation in the fact that it would also be not only beneficial for them to be involved with us about, if they're doing something, even if they're paying the bill, to try and find ways to assist them financially through the taxes or whatever. But when they want to do something moving forward, whether it be a new structure or something else, that if they had the municipality in the loop prior to going out to the public, because the one downside is that the Lions wanted the splash pad. They recognized that there was a need in the community, a desire in the community to have something like that. And so they wanted to go ahead and do it. But they were already talking to the community before they talked to council, but they wanted council to have some involvement in it. It would be nice that if council's going to have involvement, that council be made aware of the fact before it becomes a public event. I'm not saying that we would ever stop somebody from doing something. But my example would be when the 5 wards had the reserves, when we started, we kind of had a rule that we didn't want, it only took the 2 members from that ward to spend the money. And the only time that council was ever going to say no was if they were going to spend the money that would cause a burden on the rest of the municipality down the road, maintaining it or running it or whatever it was going to be. Let's say McKillop had enough money to go out and build a separate arena on their own. Well, the rest of council would have had to approve that because we would have had to do the carrying costs after the fact. So that's my example. So if a service group recognizes that there's a need for something in the community and they're going to raise the money for the capital, that's great that they recognize it and that they're able to do it. But we want to make sure that we're brought into the loop ahead of time, because it's one thing for them to put it up and running, but if we're going to be replacing the roof or doing this or doing that down the road, maintaining the structure after the fact, we'd like to be made aware of it ahead of time. So at least we could have a discussion, or at least offer recommendations of what we would like to see or not like to see, because we'll have a responsibility back to the taxpayer at the end of the day. Go ahead, John.
2 things on that. First of all, I believe with the splash pad, for my involvement, Councilor Fisher, you can probably take this. The Lions did not want the splash pad at first, not that they were against it. They didn't want the upkeep, the maintenance and all of that cost without the community group coming to the Lions for a location. And I think that did come to council at the same time, like when there was discussions. The second part, and the most important thing there is this all comes back down to having a new position, and we have to be the communicator, not the service council. We need to have our manager send that letter out saying, here's the process. If you're doing anything, please contact Dave Marin. We may be able to save you money. We can be proactive as opposed to waiting, because it's going to take 4 or 5 projects. But these different service groups are going to miss out on that 13% savings. We've got the new manager right now. Not that he should be seeing me going to meetings, but that's a new process. If you're doing anything in your backyard, let us know. We can save you money or save you in kind if we can, have a service. So that's just my opinion on it.
Go ahead, Brett.
I just kind of, I did think it was maybe gonna speak to this a little bit too as well. So we've had some conversation. There's been a lot of good discussions about this, and it's been a good discussion, but I think in the end of the day, I've recognized the fact that this whole the whole relationship between, we have a great group of volunteers, and the relationship there is, it's great, but there's some challenges from a financial perspective, I guess, and from management and trying to figure out things that I think myself, the director of community services, and my director of finance want to meet with the service clubs as a minimum, as well as the volunteer groups for all our different halls and our sports fields and all that. We want to kind of coordinate meetings with them to understand how their operation works, what's the best way to manage this. How do we determine what type of funding they need and what is that going to be? And then hopefully, ideally, come back with a policy collectively through Huron East as to how each of these things would operate, or how it would be, what ends up being Huron East's responsibility collectively. But that's a conversation that Lisa, myself, and Stacy want to have. It'll be sort of in that September timeframe is where we're looking at putting a coordinated person. So I think what you're saying in terms of that process, you're right. That is, there probably hasn't been great communication, and it's sort of been disjointed but now we'll have sort of formalizing that process and those connections and hopefully coming back to council with some type of standardized policy as to how each of those centers should run, or those centers, or what I want to call them, parks, how they should be operating, what's Huron East's responsibility, what's the volunteer or service club's responsibilities, and clearly define that and have some continuity and consistency. Because to be honest, I'm not 100% sure how each of those run, right? And so I'm not sure, who's paying for what and where the dollars are kind of going. That the volunteer groups run the centers, they rent it all, the revenue comes into them, they have their own accounts. We just need to have some continuity there collectively as to how those are being operated, and make sure that we're giving them the proper support from a municipal perspective. And I just want to make sure that's happening. So that's my intent from a standpoint of the community service department and our restructuring, is to be able to kind of bring that big fold in there. So that'll be a project that we'll be working on over the next 2 or 3 months. And I think that addresses a lot of what you said, Counselor.
Yeah, just question, and again, no ideas, because I'm learning this as well, but Dave is our manager of Parks and Rec, or Parks, and Lisa's our director of recreation.
Community services.
Community services. So not every park has recreation attached to it. The Elizabeth Park, and I'm just wondering if we got the right person at the table.
The right person's at the table.
Thank you.
Councilor McGrath.
That should be our contact person, John's point. Like I've heard Mr. Costello saying here, I'm having conversations, I'm having conversations with Brad. The person we hired to look after these RLC buildings should be Dave or Lisa. Who looks into that information and writes the report, brings it up, or whatever the case, because that to me is must be part of the job description. If you're in charge, somebody to do a budget, you've got a budget of parks, recreation, budget. And you're designating it out. And
I think
use
everybody
those people
agrees
at
with
that
that.
point.
I think everybody agrees with that, but their new titles only took effect, what, a month ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
I'm just saying, like, Even when he left here, he said he was gonna be reporting to Brad. I'm just saying, we have people in place to report
To
to.
do that.
Right,
And
okay,
that's who it should be reported to.
that's right.
That's just
It's
based,
gonna end up with Brad at the end of the day, but that's your first.
that's just based on the fact that I had conversations with him because of his delegation request. I was just trying to get.
No,
additional
that's,
information.
yeah, I'm not picking on you, Brad.
No, I-
I'm saying they have somebody who's, that's their job.
Any follow-up on this anymore tonight? Okay, all right, thanks for the discussion. So are there any notice of motions at this time? Okay, seeing none, any announcements? Okay, I have one. I'm going on holidays.
Again?
I will miss the first Tuesday in July. So Deputy Mayor will be taking over that again. Is there any other business that anybody wanted to discuss? Seeing none, it says bylaws, but I think we have a closed session.
We don't have any, excuse me, we don't have any bylaws, so we're just going into close now, and at the end will be the complementary bylaw.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder to go into close? Moved by Councillor Fisher, second by Councillor Dalton, that a closed meeting of council be held on Tuesday, June 20th of 2023 at 7:26 PM in the Town Hall Council Chamber in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 for the purpose of the following matters. 16.1, adoption of the May 16th, 2023 closed session of council meeting minutes, and 16.2, 239 paragraph 2 subsection H, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality of by Canada, a province or territory or crown agency regarding an agreement with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And that CAO Brad McRoberts, Public Works Manager Barry Mills, Director of Finance Treasurer Stacy Gaynor, and Clerk Jessica Rudy remain in the closed session. All those in favor? And motion carries.